We are talking about reflection, exploring plain old CLR objects. But you know, the real idea that is, I think we should have more tools that automatically generate UIs, and I'm not talking about for end users or you know, even internal users, but for ourselves. You know, just having tools for ourselves that let us um, play around with ideas, to create data structures, to see what those things translate into. I think we're the first good people to target. And, you know, if the users, I mean, if you want to give it to the users, I think it's a terrible idea at first, until we figure some of these things out. But I think we're the first customers. So this talk is actually more targeted for you guys, especially if you're working on like enterprise applications and you have a lot of stuff. You have complex architectures. You need something that's going to maybe reveal it. So let's get started. Disclaimer. This talk is about exploring ideas and sparking discussion. It's actually more of prototype code. This is really like in process. I mean, I like to think of myself as Picasso, but if you ever seen like any of these you know, animations where you've watched Picasso, like, you know, draw something and then he changes his mind like right in the middle of it. He's like, you know what, I want her face to go the other way. You know, and he just sort of erases it and then he starts painting over that. Well, this is what this is. So I just want to give you a disclaimer, but it is about exploring ideas. I'm not an expert. I don't advocate the methods that I'm going to show you. A lot of them are pretty nasty, all right? But they're nasty because I just want to demonstrate the ideas. And very, very specifically, these ideas, don't put them in production code because they will introduce attack vectors. I mean, but this is something that we will talk about later on in the talk. But I think we should keep going with this. All right. So this thing is very much paper mache scaffold approach first. I'm going to be very heretical. I think, pretty sure I misspelled that. I'm going to offend you with some code. I'm going to, you know, there's going to be a lot of very weakly type stuff. You know, there is going to be a point where we're going to talk about taking some of this weakly type stuff and translating it to a more type safe approach. So, you know, having worked in both environments, I do find that sort of taking a very loose approach to be pretty good, especially if you're just trying to explore an idea. And I do want to hear your guys' objections. I mean, you kind of think of it as a code review. All right, so this is the agenda. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about exploring the POCOs. Specifically, we're going to do something which is a great idea for security, which is, hey, let's map URLs, you know, and allow you to navigate objects with that. What could go wrong, right? We're also going to talk about displaying stuff, you know, creating like an extensible object dumper, you know, something where we can play around with it. And, you know, we'll do a little bit of metaprogramming, not too much. I mean, this is not like an Eric Sartopoulos talk. I mean, this is like, you know, 101, but we'll talk about some of the things that he does. I mean, he does implement some of those ideas and things like type shape, but he does an awesome job, and I can't speak to that. So Act 1, exploring POCOs. This isn't that hard, especially if you're playing around. So I started a Twitter account of maybe a couple months ago, and I haven't contributed to it in a month, where I record like little GIFs, and I you know, recording something, I speed it up, and then I show it to you. So one of the things that I recorded was basically making like a very simple CLR type for .NET, and it's basically a lazy tree. It's you know, you give it a value, you give it a function in the constructor. The function just takes that single value, returns multiple, whatever number of values, and then from there, what we do is we just recurse, you know. So we have one property, the value property, and then our children property, which basically returns a tree. So it's kind of cool. I recorded this a while back, maybe a month, where the idea is we have our single, I say if we have a single value function that returns a list of values, we can make a tree. So we type this out, we have our value, our get children, we try it out, and I show you all the warts and all. I don't even try to make this thing recursive at first. I mean, the whole point of this thing is to show you, you know, the incremental approach. So now we do want to make it recurse, but you can see when I print it out here, I got my tent path and some folders. Now we're going to make this thing, you know, return basically an infinite tree. And you can see that link pad. Did you catch it? All right. You can see if you caught it. It's a little too fast. It has this really cool feature where you can just keep expanding child objects. It's sort of lazy, you know, almost like the F-sharp lazy feature. Oh yeah, by the way, my virus scanner deleted LinkPad yesterday, my work virus scanner, so I still do have LinkPad 4, so let's try it out, actually. We can take this. I actually haven't tried it on LinkPad 4, but, you know, in spirit of Bill O'Reilly, we'll do it live.
Oh.
Alright, so we have our tree object. We can add our, you know what, I'm going to put in my projects. Oops, projects. I usually have a little GitHub folder. And so what I should be able to do is I should be able to give you the root for that thing. Oops, I need to open system, come on dude, system IO, enumerate. Okay, so here you go. We have our directories, and when you click on these children, you'll see that it lets you, you know, go through and
tables.
yeah, it's kind of a neat little feature. They have a number of things like that where it basically it lets you inject things like these little smart links. You can create the links that will do things like open up new tabs, you know, with where you can dump stuff, or you can even open up little web browsers. So, you know, I've been using LinkPad for a while. It's a great tool, you know, especially if I have ideas, and you know, if I'm talking to a project manager, it's a really good tool for doing stuff like that. So I've really I've taken to you know, sort of creating my own sort of LinkPad type of tools over the years. So just make sure that this one compiles. So I have a little web server that I'm going to start up. So I have some stuff. I have a very basic, plain old CLR object. You know, some of the most uninspired F-sharp. Got a little person object with a name, date of birth, and we gave him some tasks because, you know, you can't be idle. And so we actually have two CLR objects. But what we did is we loaded up a little suave web server, and we said, print this thing, you know? So the first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted my own LinkPad, you know, sort of utility, but I wanted to be able to use it in my environment. So you can dump it, you know, however deep you want to do it. For example, if I say explore 1, you know, really it limits it to one level. But you know, the one thing that I threw in though was that you could, you know, maybe click on one of the objects, and you know, it's really terrible, you can't see it, but there is a URL up here that says tasks, and when you click on it, it navigates and it takes you into, so it takes you into your tasks object, so it does allow you to explore that. All right, so that's kind of neat. The next thing that I wanted to do was take our tree example. So, you know, we're back to this, and we tell it to explore it. We reload our page, and you know, we're back to our trees. What is it? You know, my project's GitHub. So now we should be able to explore some of the files. So you'll notice that the top value isn't clickable. It's, you know, it's a primary primary or primitive type. So why would you bother making that expandable or navigatable? So we'll go into our children, and we'll see we have our. You know what? Let me just make this one. So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to re-execute this line. I'll reload it, and so we have our folders. Oh, we got something from Bayard Rock here. You know, so we'll navigate into that. So you can keep navigating. Now this really isn't that sophisticated. I mean, all I'm.
Can you zoom in on that just so it's bigger?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Yep. Gracias.
Is that better?
I thought it was nyc-fsharp. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So here we are. We have our folders. I'm going to navigate into Bayard Rock, and I'm sure you can't see it, but the URL up top is updating to that, you know. So if I go into if-sharp, really cool project, by the way, with the note taking, you know, we can keep going in and just keep drilling down. And you know, that was the one thing that I thought that LinkPad really should have. You know, it should have something that should really let you drill down and go in, you know, infinitely, right? I mean, why stop? I mean, especially if you're going to put it out on the public internet. I mean, let your users just take your CLR objects and just navigate right in. I mean, what's better than that, right?
Editing them. You should have like an edit box so you can change them.
There you go. I like that. I like the way you think. All right. So again, this is our tree object, and the exact same thing that I showed you on LinkPad. Only I got like these namespaces that begin with Stego, which was, by the way, it was a nickname given to me by a guy who legally changed his name to Danger. So that means something.
His last name's Zone.
You know. Actually, it's Manly. Danger Manly. So, I don't know how, you can't beat that. That was his given name. That was to disambiguate you from Steve-O, which was the other Steve, right? So, you know, we can kind of follow through with this, and that tree structure that we were talking about, that's a neat and useful tree structure, and we're going to kind of come back to that. We're going to play with that, but we can create something a little bit more specific. I mean, we could create our folder object. You probably noticed that, by the way, this URL is not going to work, so I'm going to go back to the root. You probably noticed that we didn't have files. We weren't doing anything with files. So if we go back here, and I don't remember who admin Fairhead is.
No, just icons.
All right, oh, just icons? Oh, that's not worth it. Let's go to Bayard Rock. They have cool stuff. All right, so as we get down into this, Ooh, look at this, man. I mean, I'm trying to display these file names, but clearly all I'm doing is showing the file length. So this is a little bit embarrassing. And you can see it takes me to the get attributes. But what we can do though is we can play around with this a little bit. Yeah, let's come back to that. Let's keep going. Let's keep looking. We all love type providers. Who doesn't love type providers? Especially if you have something like a database. You know, because I don't like writing code. I'm freaking lazy. I mean, especially as an enterprise developer. I mean, come on. Doesn't get lazier than that. So I'm going to point this thing to a database. Whoops. Something I downloaded off of the internet, so I'm sure it's pretty good. And I'll tell this thing to get me a data context. And let's do this. Let's create some CLR objects. We're going to create a sort of like a root object. It's like an app. I mean, for lack of better, this is really just simple or simpleton type of stuff here. But we're going to tell it to explore it. So I sent that thing to the browser, and I'm going to go back to my root. And you can see our little app showed up. Now it has our customers and it has our orders. Customers just being, you know, something that we're pulling out of the database, and the orders being something that, well, we pulled it out of the database, but we thought that we would just take a little sum of the words and show that up front. So here's the idea. The idea is that you may have little checks or little things that you might want to investigate in your application. And like I said earlier on, you know, this thing, I really want you to pay attention to, you know, the selfish reasons of using something like this. When you can create, I don't want to use it is kind of like an isomorphic interface. The interface is somewhat isomorphic to your model. And that's what I really want to get at, is that, you know, using conventions, using you know, a little bit of creativity, you should be able to navigate into those models, especially as you layer those models. Because you might have this what business object layer or whatever, you know, where you're coordinating things maybe across different servers, and then you can narrow into like one particular service, and so you could use something like this to basically let you or your project manager or your product manager or whoever get a sense of what you're doing. Now, I did something like this a little while back, a couple of years ago, with a project manager. This guy, he's not very technical, but I sort of took like a CQRS type of approach, you know, where as events came in, I made sure to record everything. So here's the thing, you know, when they brought the project to me, they were already behind. Mm-hmm. You know, I had to work with an API that I didn't know how, I mean, I barely started seeing. You know, the specs, they were like basically non-existing specs. I'm sure you guys never ever work with non-existing specs. I know I'm the only one in the world who ever works with non-existing specs. So, you know, basically what we're doing is we're pulling stuff out of our ERP system, we're sending it up to this other system, and you know, these things, basically what happens is when something goes wrong, they come to me and they say, why did you break it? and I have to provide evidence, that I didn't break it, it was this thing. So think of these sorts of tools as like your way of communicating with your project manager, and let your project manager explore your architecture, So you kind of give them like maybe a searchable, sortable, whatever interface. They can drill down. They can investigate issues without you, because basically there's not too many of me's, and I got enough shit to do. So, beyond you, think about how you might be able to, use something like this with a product manager.
So it's sort of giving them like a half a debugger.
Half a debugger. That's about it. It's about half a debugger. Yeah, no, it is really. All right. So the part that we've been talking about a lot is navigating objects, and of course, I love to simplify things, the most simplest. And so what do we need? Well, we just need 3 lines of code and you're done, right? I mean, I might as well get out of here. What I like about these 3 lines of code is not only is it just very naive, but it's pretty prototypical of what we need to navigate. So think of it as like a basic building block. We have a function, we don't care about the name of what it does, but we know that it takes 2 parameters. It takes the name and an object, and it returns something that's optional. I mean, right now I just made it optional, but I mean, if you think about our URLs, it's not just optional. I mean, you could say that, hey, I don't want to curse, but hey, whatever, you moron, you gave me some invalid data, so I'm going to give you what, a 304? All right, so, or if that thing doesn't exist, we're going to return a 404. But in our case, we're just going to say some or none, right? So, I mean, this thing, that's it. And we're going to use the fast reflect library, which is 11 times slower than a plain old call, but whatever. It's also not type safe, And look at this, man. We're using exception handling for a common case. Right? That's not good. That's not good. No, but we don't care, because all we're doing is we're navigating URLs, and it's only for us and our project managers. Who gives a shit, right? And, it's pretty simple to use. You got yourself a person object, you pipe it, get something, you get some, you get none. No big deal. The other thing we might want to do, though, is, what about like index properties? Because, things like our folders, they don't have, you're not really navigating. I realized we were navigating on the, what is it called, the index, but we can play with this. So if we wanted to navigate on something like an index property, a little indexer, we could do that. Again, it's the same signature. Here's an example where we have our little indexer, and we take our path and we add the GitHub and navigate down that. So if we have those sorts of building blocks, what we really want to be able to do from there is, it would be nice if we were able to navigate a path. Because just going one step is, it's hardly useful. So, it's not very hard. We'll take our one thing, our try get indexer, we'll use that. So we have a pretty straightforward function where we get a string list for our path and our object, and again, if we have something, we'll return none. If not, create a little function which allows us to just simply navigate the segment. You know, so what do? We know we're going to be returning an optional object, and then, you know, each list item in the path is going to be one of those segments. So we'll navigate it, and then we'll fold it. So, you know, a fold operation is maybe not the most ideal, but it's not bad. You know, I always like it when you come across something like, oh, that's just a fold operation, you know, or a try-pick, or something like that. All right, so hey, if we're going to map URLs to it, you know, again, going back to Bill O'Reilly, you know, why not just use split and just throw it at it? 'Cause it's the worst that could happen. Right? So I obviously I don't recommend doing this sort of stuff in production code, but you know, when you're prototyping, if you're given like a presentation, you know, on prototype stuff, why not do things the dirty way? I mean, just try it now and then. It feels good. You know? So what we also did is we created a really, really simple ON web server. Not a lot there. This actually doesn't even navigate anything. It just says welcome, and it shows you the path that you threw in. And that's it. So let's get a little bit more into the printers. You know, we have this you know, URL navigation. We saw like the most naive way that we can navigate a URL. Now, what I want to kind of talk about a little bit later is, just check, let's see how much later we have. We have an hour and 59 minutes. What's going on?
It's going up.
Yeah, it's gaining time.
It's gaining. I put the display down, I dimmed it, so I think
Oh.
if we get a little sunlight, you know, a little photovoltaics, I think we'll be good to go. All right. Oh, so you can always create an unsafe HTML paper, and this was one of those things that I did in one of my little 1.5-minute link pad things. Of course, I want to say, like, within a minute of posting this, that was like the first comment I got from someone, like, hey, oh, look at that. You're just subjecting your users to all sorts of cross-site script injection. Like, come on, man, it's for demonstration purposes. I mean, I'm trying to type as fast as I can. So here's the idea. Make sure that this thing doesn't dim on me. If we have a type, we could specify it as a generic argument. Well, we could, you know, get the properties for this type, and we could return a function that takes that particular, so it's kind of customized for that type. So you run this thing, this first half runs and it saves, and then it returns this function, which is pretty straightforward, you know, string building function. Of course, it depends stuff, but it works. I mean, you know, we don't do any HTML encoding, but it gets the idea across. It gets the idea that we can take types and we can create specialized and custom object or custom functions specifically for that type. Now, I want to just kind of point out that this is going in one direction. This is taking that specific type and it's making a printer, right? So we have like from generic to something that's not generic. But just think about this, though. We could go the other way. I mean, we could go from something that's not generic, something like an HTTP request, and it could, you know, return something optionally, a generic option. You know, so It could be like, try to map this thing a la, NVC or whatever automatic binding mechanism. So I really want to get the point across that this is something that, we should probably play with more. But that sort of string building isn't, for our purposes, for what we're doing here, I wanted something a little bit better. So, I decided to go with like a little bit more of a type safe approach where I wanted to be able to just encode documents, and I wanted to only encode it in 3 lines. And so like, what do we got? We got tags, we got attributes, and we have a body, and oh yeah, we got text. And this is just really to simplify, what we're doing. But, with that thing, that type that I defined, we can maybe write up something that will encode things properly. For example, if we have some text, well, we should probably properly encode it. I'll tell you, when you don't encode things, it provides features that your users never thought they would have. Especially like if you're doing like a social network, who doesn't want more friends, right? Let them write those scripts. So yeah, if it's text, just encode it. But if we have a tag, it's not the fastest code, but you can be sure that it will encode things correctly. And we can update our first HTML printer, that thing that basically takes a simple like record type object, and we could update it to something that's a little bit more safe. So we just kind of walk through this real quick, because when you look at this for the first time, it kind of looks like crap, to be honest. Especially if you're like, especially if you're like a React developer, where it's like, we got targeting people here. Where you got like built-in HTML, or if you're using VB, right, Paul? VB. I'll tell you, I've exploited that feature too many times. Built-in XML into VB. So yeah, because you don't have built-in XML literals in F#, you got to do stuff like this. We have a table which has no attributes. Loop over. I'm pretty sure that should say yield or something.
That's just doing it eagerly.
I'll tell you, the code that's actually in here does have yield. All right. So there you go. Give us a type. I'll give you a really simplistic printer. All right. Now we could go a totally different route altogether. To be honest, when I first started this stuff a while back, I didn't think about taking a type and pre-compiling a function and then reusing that. Especially if you're going to memoize it or something, right? And so when I initially started doing these sorts of object dumpers, I'd basically take an object and I would just type test it, and it would kind of look something like this. If this thing's a primitive type, that's going to be text. If it's nullable, well, take the thing that's inside of the nullable, print that. And you can see here that I have a little bit of a level. Tend to keep track of how far I've gone down, because typically I don't want things to go running away. Are you a generic list? Are you like a IEnumerable of customers? Well, if you are, well, I might want your getters, and just give me the list, and I'm just going to feed you off to this other function, and you'll print it. Otherwise, if you're not that, then you get to go off to the crappy function where we don't care about. And we have our object, just plain old records. This is kind of prototypical. This is what people usually do. This is like, it's a little bit more than JSON, because JSON doesn't really have an idea of or concept of generics. You don't really you never get to know that something is IEnumable customers. You can loop over everything and figure out what are all the sets of all of the properties and do that. But the other thing that I figured I needed to do when I was dumping stuff, especially if I wanted to navigate, I need to keep track of like where I was. So I have some sort of value, but I need to know like how I got here. So when I'm printing something, I can basically, I have to feed something that says like, hey, you got to create a link that's going to go to the child of this thing. So you kind of need that contextual information. So we started playing with that. To create something like this, you can think of it as your return monadic, but your lift function. Give me a value, I'll give you a nav context, and way to sort of work our way down. All right. So you take a little bit of a look at some of the stuff, what it ends up looking like. We were looking at our tag earlier, our HTML stuff, and we saw this earlier. I have a couple of extra functions like a toString and a little thing that lets you sort of make special tags. And then I decided to add an interface for objects. Let's say you had some sort of object, but you wanted it to custom render itself somehow. Well, this might be one way. You could always type test it. You say, hey, it kind of goes back. Have you guys? How many of you have actually worked with COM? Do you guys remember COM? COM. Cool. So the rest of you didn't work with COM. COM was this like binary standard where you receive like a pointer to this object, and you would call the V table and you say like all COM objects were supported this one interface called iQueryable. And all iQueryable did is it let you ask, do you implement this interface? I said, yes, I do. I was like, okay, good. We can talk. We're going to do something. We're going to have fun. And then we do that.
Reference counting, but that's...
Oh, gotta love reference counting. I mean, come on. What could go wrong with reference counting? So that's the idea, is asking, and I think that concept, maybe, I don't know if it's used enough or not used enough, but I think it can be useful. It's an important reminder to remind people that you can ask objects in .NET very easily, do you support this thing? And then yes, if you do. And it's a nice extension point. It's one type of extension point, but it's a useful extension point. So, all right, so we're looking at our printer. I showed you like a very, very simple version of that printer. And I kind of wanted to show you like, the printer that's actually being used. It's not pretty. I mean, it's okay, but it could be nicer. It could definitely be more orthogonal. You know, I've been rushing this. So I'll zoom it out just a little bit here because I want to show you that you notice that I have like totally different rules if we're getting to the end. So there's always a max level that I provide. So if we're getting to a certain max level, I'm gonna take lists and I'm gonna say, hey, that's a list, ellipses, and you know. But I'm going to do things like this. And by the way, this print method, what it does, it takes a level, takes an object, and it's going to return one of those HTML tag things that we define, those strong type HTML tags. So the first extension point I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, do you support a method or an interface that will just give me an HTML tag? Okay, cool, we'll do that. Otherwise, are you an HTML tag? Yeah, you are. Okay, we'll send you through. Are you one of these nav context things? And remember, these nav context things, this is the thing that like carries the path. And if you are one of these things, you know, I have some special like rendering functions for you. I have one for nav lists and one for nav objects, and it's very easy to add these things. And you know, I'll tell you, part of the reason that I'm walking you guys through this code is, honestly, you know, if any of you ever want to like just come up to me afterwards and say like, dude, I'd love to code review you and tell you all of the places where this sucks, like please, please, please. Talk to me. I mean, I don't know, I might be one of the strangest people, but I actually love code reviews. I love it when people tell me where all of my flaws are, because I mean, it can only get better from there, right? So, but also, I don't want you to just look at it critically. I want you to like sort of soak this in and I'm kind of talking slow because I really want this to sort of soak in. I want you to look in and say like, you know what, you should really have this here or that there. So, you know, all right. So if you're primitive, do this. If you're generic list, do that. I mean, there are things we could add. We could add stuff for dictionaries or maps or lookups or functions or, I mean, think of all of the types of things that are in the .NET and the F# world. I mean, what are things that we could add to it? Or, there you go, is there a better mechanism for adding, you know, specific printers that take advantage of conventions? Yeah.
Are you running this F# library as a tool of yours in a C# shop?
No, I actually have C# versions of this stuff.
The reason I ask is there a lot of F#y things that you don't mention there, but in the C# world, you wouldn't have them, so you don't need them.
Oh,
like tuples.
Yeah, I don't use a lot of. I tend to use tuples like for like as intermediate. I don't really return stuff as tuples. Like if I return stuff, I'll label stuff, you know, because I'm almost always like, you know, printing or sending to something that's going to use the labels. So, all right.
Yeah, by the time you want to label something, you're better off just creating an actual type for it.
That's what I end up doing. Well, in C# I use a lot of anonymous objects too.
Well, sure, those, yeah, they serve the same purpose though.
Yeah, and thank you, Don Simon, for hearing my prayers. So, you know, in the other side of the branch, I mean, holy crap, it's almost copy paste, which is terrible. But there's some differences.
Right.
There's some differences. And you know, what we do is when we get into things like the navigational objects, you know, this is where it kind of gets a little bit more interesting. You know, again, this isn't the most efficient, but what it does is it sort of shows you that, you know, we're doing things like, we're discriminating between primitive members and sort of like record type of object members, you know, because we want to treat those differently. You know, we're not gonna bother creating a hyperlink to, you know, to a single value, and that's silly. And you know, you will do that for object members, but the enumerable members, you'll probably do something different, you know. So the idea is, what I really want to kind of get into your guys' heads is, you know, what are some of those conventions that you try to weave throughout your program? Can you use something like this to create a, I don't know, like a natural reward system for doing the right thing? It's like, if you do the right thing, I'm going to show you a nicer user interface. If you do the right thing for, like for example, if you have a function with or some sort of endpoint, but you actually specified the validators, like, you know, your games can only have these characters, you know. Everything maybe has like a regex assigned, but only if you have regexes assigned and validators for everything will I let you expose it, and I'll give you functionality for free. So it's a little bit of, I mean, it's manipulating your fellow developers, but it's for a better purpose, right?
Could I go in the opposite direction and sort of bake in some functionality where you've done the wrong thing and now I'm going to have the software like do horrible things to you?
You could. You could. Yeah,
Reduce
yeah.
the font to a tiny size.
Yeah, a little. So, you know, here we're printing regular objects. This is just another version of it without hyperlinks. You want to print a crappy list. You want to create a generic navigational list. So, you know, we're printing a table. We got our headers up here. We have our body. Go to the records. Get the point. You know, this is the idea. So you could do all of that stuff. But you know, sometimes you don't want to do all that stuff. You just want to keep things simple, you know, especially when you're unwind, you go home, you open up your blog, and you're like, oh, just want to not work, and I want to worship Taylor Swift. So you could do that. We can make our little fan page. You know, this is very humble fan page, but you know, the point is, you know, rather than write it up in HTML, you don't have to use that. You can use your favorite language, F# to write your fan page. You throw your header, your paragraphs, and then you know what? Screw it. Throw in an object while you're at it. I mean, if you're just dumping things, I mean, why not do that, you know? So, we go back. Oh, good. Of course we don't have that. Oh, wonderful. So yeah, my Taylor Swift fan page written in F# and our header, our paragraph, and our object. So, there you go. That's not too bad. You know, you might want to change this though. You might want to say something like, I actually do want to implement one of these iHTML object things, right? And then you're going to need to remember this to HTML. You know, we just put her name in, right? Put in all of her details. Anytime you see a person record, you could display the default thing, but you know, you could this age, there's old go. All right. Oops.
Some object, things like that.
I do have to save this. Okay, so now that I've updated it, I can just kind of come back, re-execute this. You know, so anytime I see a person, I'm just going to display the person like that. You know, so it's one ad hoc way of doing it, but it's not necessarily the only ad hoc way you might want to do something like that.
It's kind of like when you put a two-string on your type so that when the debugger shows it, it doesn't show you like just a glob.
Yeah, but it's like two string, but you kind of get a little something extra.
Oh, no, it's different, but it's the same
Yeah.
idea.
Exactly. You know, one of the things that I have written in C# is, you know what, maybe I can show it real quick. It's a little thing that I do. Anytime I need like a searchable or sortable table, I have a little thing that says like, you know, I just go, it's a razor helper. I say UI.table, give it a iQueryable, and I'm like, I think I have a little extension method that says like, all right, make this thing sortable, pageable. And it just takes that and then, you know, displays it, and it has a little feature where it'll look at the query strings, and if you click on something, it will page it and that sort of stuff. But it's always nice to just be able to take something like that. Because here's the thing, when you're doing stuff for you internally and for your project manager, you don't want you want to write all this nonsense UI code. You just want to take the essence of what you're doing, show them the data, and go UI.table. So this afternoon, I don't know, of course I left it this afternoon, right? I'm like, hey, you know, what would it take to do something like a UI.table? So, wait a minute, where is it? Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know what, before I go there, I did actually, I did create another version of my Taylor Swift thing where I wanted to generalize it because I like Jimmy Page as much as I like Taylor Swift. I mean, so you got to give them equal amounts of love. So I think you guys see how this works, right? Okay. Yeah, so I have a little area for this this website. If I wanted to, here's the thing. I also don't think that. I mean, this might sound, you know, worse from a heretic, but you know, working in a dual shop, I like writing stuff that also benefits C# developers, and I think there's.
I'm with you on that one.
I think there's something about that.
Even better if you can benefit the VB developers.
Yeah. Let's just, we'll call them, what do we call them, like, I almost called them deplorable developers. That's terrible.
I just call it.
That's not Olin, is it?
The musical notation thing.
Basket of development.
Basket of developers. Yeah, that other basket of developers. Hey, I'm one of those deplorable. I can say that. No, but so you know, one of the things that I wanted to be able to do in this environment, in the MVC environment, was it's like, look, okay, I want to be able to make stuff very quickly. I don't want to deal with all of this controller bullshit. A lot of times I prototype stuff in Razor because the reason I do it is I can save files and I can refresh and it comes right back up. I think there's a huge value in doing that sort of stuff.
I remember one of his P's to support that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when I went to work for my friend's company, they forced me to use PHP.
That
What?
explains why you
Well,
left.
PHP has improved substantially though from the old days.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I'll tell you, after I improved it with JetBrains, I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of gave it like the effect of erased types, but
Mhm.
hey, nevertheless. But I'll tell you though, the freedom of working in that type-free environment, it did allow, I tried things I wouldn't have normally tried in F#. I would have dicked around with the types like way too long before I would have, you know, actually solved the problem. And so I'm taking a different approach these days where, you know, I sort of bastardize F#, but I realize there's always a path back to doing it the right way. So, you know, it's like Gordon Ramsay, you know, you can, I don't know if he ever says this, but I'm going to take liberties and say that he says this. You can screw up your workstation temporarily as long as you clean that shit up afterwards. So, and that's the point of it. So here's this thing. Basically, it's very similar to our Explorer. Now, like I was telling you guys, we have this UI table thing. So if I go to something like the branches, and you know, this is the location, some of our locations. You can see everything up top. Well, first of all, we got our little. I don't know if you remember, you guys can see this.
Oh,
We have our
pages, yeah.
pages. You know, we can go to next, last, of course, and counting everything takes like 0 resources, right? Especially for large data sets. I kid. But we can search, or we can't search, but we can sort. So we get a couple of things. We get paging and sorting, and we get them together. And the way we do it is we go down here, and I think I have a, oh yeah, here we go. You know, oh yeah, that's what it was. I have a little thing that lets me take a query. Anytime I have an iQueryable, this is my lift function. I say, all right, take that iQueryable, turn it to a sorted page list, you know? And this UI table behaves differently if I give it a regular iQueryable versus a sorted page list iQueryable. But that sorted page list iQueryable, basically, I don't know what you would call it. I've been calling it in my head projection types, because basically what you're doing is you're just taking a single type. You're not adding really anything to it. It's kind of like it's not really a decorator because you're not returning the same type of thing, but all you're doing is you're wrapping around something so something else, something that's using reflection, can look at it and go, I know you want to maybe display it differently, or you want to navigate it differently, right? And that's the idea here. So I was thinking, well, you know, what would it take to do something like that in F#? And like I said, it started today. I don't know, about 1 o'clock, and I actually took a nap because I had like 3 because I had a hard time sleeping last night. So, but maybe an hour or 2, not even that, in a lot less code than the original C# version. So, you know, what does it take? You know, you want, first of all, the first thing that you need to do is you need to, yeah, here's our query shit. I always recommend using colorful names in your code. But what we can do is we can add a little sort extension, not really extension method, this for F#. So if you give us an iQueryable and a column and a direction, then, you know, we'll do the minimal, literally the minimal, to make that happen. We're in descending or descending order. If you give me a page request, you know, this is which page do you want, how big are the pages, and are we sorting, and which direction? So if you give me that in an iQueryable, and 8 lines of code, we can return you an object that just annotates it with this extra information. And that's it. The sorted page list, this is that projection type. And what I didn't get around to yet, and I don't know if you guys want to do this together, but we could do it together, because
Let's do it together.
we could write up a little page thing, and
Let's do it.
this is like pair programming, but with a lot of people on it. Actually, I've heard about stuff like this at like Ruby meetups. They'll do this sort of stuff. People just shout out, "Do this, do that." So we have this sorted page list. I'll show you where it goes so far.
Dash F.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
Pseudo.
by the way, we should do things like really enterprisey. So what we'll do is we'll create a data access layer. Right? With our type divider. And then we'll create a business logic layer right there. All right, cool. This is how we do it in the enterprise world. All right, so we'll run that stuff. And the reason I kind of want us to do this is I want us to appreciate the process of doing something like this. Oops, that's the right thing. All right, so that thing's gone now. Let's take a look at our customers. So we have an app. This app returns customers, right? And what did we say we had? We had a sorted page list. So if I did something like this, took my sorted page list and wrapped it around that, and simply ran these things again, you can come back here, and by the way, let's go back here. All right, so now it just says we have a sorted page list, which is really not helpful. So what we can do is we could implement our interface. HTML object. We can add something, was it to HTML? And then this is just, I always like doing the smallest thing possible. Let me make this a little faster by all right, so we do one little change, we refresh our page, we can see what happens. Not a big deal. The easiest thing that we can do, now let's see here, wait a minute. We have this, you know what? What we do is we actually have a, I don't want to do that here. Because we have this thing called get list. We give it a page request, right? That's what we really want to do. So let's do this. So a sorted page list has a get list parameter, and what we'll do is we'll feed it. I'm just going to create a dummy one right here. Okay. So now what it's doing is this is what happens when you feed that thing in. Well, you get get this stuff back. We get your list. So if I fed it like, you know, page 2, page 3, you can see that we'll get that stuff. So maybe what we want to do is we want to make this page list thing renderable. And I think I could do that actually probably down here, couldn't I? A little bit closer. Alright. I should be able to do this. Right? Actually, I've never done this before. Anybody else who can do this?
What are you trying to do?
I don't know if you can throw an interface on that, but you can go ahead and do it. Let's see.
Do it live.
Sure, if you have a fully qualified type name. Oh, wait, no, you're putting an interface on it?
Yeah.
That's not gonna
No.
work.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, it's called 2HTML.
Clear type, extension.
Remember this
No, you can't.
get HTML or
Oh,
is it,
wait.
or is it 2HTML?
Wait. All in.
Yeah, I didn't think
Yeah,
you
the
could stick an
interfaces
interface
have
on
to be
that.
above.
You'd have to, you could do like an object expression that implements the interface and then wraps an instance of that, but that's not really the same thing.
Yeah. Just gotta do it up here.
Good idea, though.
I thought it was. Oh, wow, it really is particular.
Just add and to all of your text.
Is the member get HTML or 2HTML?
That's a good question.
I thought it was 2.
It's 2 HTML for HTML objects.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm glad you guys know my code better than me already.
Just sucking us in by making mistakes, so we'll chime in.
It's a whole different world when you're on that side of the keyboard. You know?
This is how it works.
Everything looks differently from over here.
All right, so we know that we're going to start off with a table. And why don't we just steal some stuff from, well, are we going to start with a table? I mean, we might start with something like a div. And maybe,
We should start with a layer. Sorry, there you go.
let's see, now, what else can we do here? We can go to our little printer thing. Do I have all that stuff pulled in? Print HTML, yeah, print HTML. Steve printer, I have Steve name here? I don't. So I'm just gonna add it here. All right, so at least what we can do is we can pass in the list like so. Allegedly. Not, okay.
Because of the.
Yeah. Oh. And it says HTML objects not defined because it's not called that. Oh, because it's in a namespace I didn't include. Back here.
Oh,
Oh, wow. That's even better. 45. Who said live coding demos weren't a good idea?
Bill O'Reilly.
Touche.
touche. Well, you get the idea. I don't wanna terrorize you guys with this sort of stuff. But what I do want to just sort of hit on are a couple of other things. We talked a little bit about that. We talked about that. A couple of I want to talk about that. A lot of stuff that's a little work in progress. A couple of the things I did want to talk to, I wanted to demonstrate more was early on I showed you a bit of the tree, that initial tree. You start with a root and you work our way down. And one of those things that I was playing with that tree is, you know, why does the root have to be, why does that have to be a value? Why can't it be a function, right? So I started playing with that. I didn't have time to get through that, but it's something that I'm going to explore a little bit more. So most .NET functions, when you reflect over them, there's a built-in reflection method that gives you the domain and range, right? So your root object, the domain is going to probably be something like unit or config or whatever. And the range is some type. And what I think we could do with that little tree thing is based on those types, we could reflect over this in caches, but we could ask ourselves, what are the routes that we want to allow for that output type? I mean, you could think of it as they could be properties, they could be functions that simply return back a simple property, or they could be functions that do something else. You could add security to those functions. I mean, you could pre-append it. You know, for example, let's say there's a I don't know, a certain maybe an account object. You're not going to have access to other people's accounts, so you might want to set up a generic rule, just sort of like a general assertion as a function that says, all right, anytime this account thing comes in, let's check it against the current user and then just throw an exception. But we can start with that root element and we can work our way down, and we could do that development with something like this or with LinkPad. I mean, LinkPad's actually a great place of doing that. If you're able to do that, if you're able to reflect on the say you are able to reflect the paths or the URL structures of your application using something like that, using that sort of like tree type of mechanism, if you're able to do that, you're able to walk it, you're able to enumerate all of the possible places as long as you're adhering to the rules. And this sort of thing could be helpful for security testing. But you could do more than just enumerate the possible paths. What you could also do is you could provide back metadata about the types of values that can go to those paths. And you can use that to feed it to fuzzers if you want to do some proactive penetration testing. You could also use that tree mechanism, going back to our original tree, maybe to statically generate a website. So if you think about all of the things that we were doing before, as we were walking through, there's no reason why you can't turn the thing on itself, say, all right, take all of this, direct it out to this folder, statically generate a website. And I know that what's this? Who's the guy who works on the Ionide?
Chris?
Christoph?
Yeah, Christoph.
Yeah, he was working on something a few weeks ago where it was kind of like a literate type of programming where like little note taking. It's sort of like FS Reveal, but for
I missed that.
generating static sites. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing something about that.
But I think all of these things, I think they're related. I think if we compartmentalize them, we're doing ourselves a disservice. There's a lot of little things that we can, feed together and play around with. That's pretty much it. That's the whole gist of this. Any questions?
Yeah, this all on GitHub.
Yep. Actually, sure. Yeah,
Except
I'm
for
gonna.
the stuff you did today.
Yeah, I think I actually just pushed it up right before. So.
Have you played with any Smalltalk object explorers before?
No,
Reminds me
but
a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I have a little book on Smalltalk that I always come back to. I do think about.
You should just install Squeak and click around with it. It's really interesting.
Oh yeah, I've played with Squeak. The thing I like about Smalltalk the most is that the language is also kind of like a protocol. You think like it's like an RPC protocol.
Yeah.
Right.
Passing messages to objects.
Yeah. I think there's I think there's something to a little bit of dynamic dispatch. Now and then. All right.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, guys.